survived a terrible period of time in his life. This person is my grandfather, Vincent Albanese. He was captured during World War II. Though this seemed like it was a horrible setback, he got out luckily all right. I think it will be interesting to hear his story. In World War II, what branch of service did you serve in?
I was in the 1st Armored Division, Company C, 16th Engineers.
Did you join the war or were you drafted?
I was drafted into the service.
How old were you at the time you were taken prisoner?
I was taken prisoner I was 22 years old.
Do you remember the year and day that you were captured?
Yeah, it'll be a date I think I'll never forget. It was February 14th, 1943.
Where were you fighting at the time you were captured?
My company was brought up to the front lines and we were supposed to clear away the mines for the infantry because they were going to make an advance and we were supposed to take the town of Tunis.
Who captured you and where did they take you?
That morning, the morning that we were to start our job to remove the mines, Rommel was being pushed by General Montgomery, and he was trying to get back to the town of Tebessa. Tebessa was where we had all our supplies for the battalion train, and had he have reached that destination, the war might have taken a little turn at that time. Not that it would have made too much difference, but it would have helped Rommel at the time. But that was the day that we were captured, and it was St. Valentine's Day.
How did it make you feel to be captured?
It was an awful feeling. It was a feeling that you just felt helpless. There was nothing you could do. We were surrounded by German troops, and it was just one of those things. There was nothing any of us could do at the time.
Were you captured along with any other Americans?
That day, I think about 90% of our company was captured.
How did you get to the war camp?
Well, we started by walking mostly. We did a lot of walking after we were captured. Rommel's men, army moved forward and we were left behind. They took all our weapons and we just were left there, and we were guarded by German troops, and we were walked back.
What did the war camp look like?
Well, in order to answer that question, I'd have to tell you what we went through before we ever got to a work camp. We were supposed to, what the Germans were doing, they were flying us out of Tunis, and we were supposed to go to Naples, Italy, to a camp there just to get organized. But as we were crossing the Mediterranean in these Junkers 52s, the English planes were coming down and strafing us because they didn't know we were in these planes. And rather than go on to Italy, to Naples, the pilots brought the planes down in Sicily. And this is where we started our hike towards the German camps. Eventually we wound up in Capua, Italy, which was just south of Naples. But to get there we were put in boxcars and taken up through through Sicily and into Messina, and then across Messina on the ferry into Italy, and from there to Capua. From Capua we went to Stalag 7A. It was at the border of, I think it was in Germany. And from there, always riding in boxcars. And from there we went to the camp which I was in for most of my internment, which was Stalag 3B, which was in Fürstenberg, Germany.
About how many prisoners were in the camp?
That camp held a lot of prisoners. They had French prisoners, they had they had Polish prisoners, they had Americans, they had English, and I think the camp in itself held about 3,000 prisoners.
How were you treated during the time you were captured?
Well, they questioned us quite a bit. They wanted to know what our forces were and what kind of artillery we had, and of course you were schooled that all you give the enemy is name, rank, and serial number, and that's all.
What was a typical day like in the prison camp?
In the prison camp, according to the Geneva Convention, the non-commissioned officers were not obligated to go out to work. If you were private, you had no alternative. You had to go to work. I was a corporal, and I chose not to go out to work for the Germans, and I stood in the camp. In the camp, they can make you do work in the camp, such as kitchen duty or any jobs that they have in there, but you didn't have to go out and work on the farms, which a lot of my buddies had to do.
What kind of food did you eat there?
Well, the food was very sparse. There was not much of it, and what they call potato soup was a soup with no potatoes, and whatever meat was available was horse meat, if you could get it, which at that time was supposedly a delicacy for us. But the food was very little.
Do you know of anyone who died while you were there?
Well, we had a lot of unfortunate situations. Some of them got very sick. Some of them lost their minds. But actually, in the prison camp itself, when somebody got sick, they took them away. So I never did get to see any that really died at that time.
Were you beaten?
No, I can't say that we were beaten, but we were not. I don't know how to put it, but it wasn't a good life. Very far from being good.
Did you ever get depressed?
Depression? Yes, you do get depressed at times. You think of what might have been and things you should have done, and although at that time it was everybody was in the same situation, and depression was something that always came upon you.
What motivated you to keep going?
The will to live, I guess. You've got to have a lot of faith. You pray a lot, and things. It's a situation where you're always hoping that tomorrow the war will end and you'll be back home with your loved ones.
Did you ever think of escaping?
We did have an escape committee in the camp, and before you could try anything, you had to go before this committee, and you had to present your plans and what. Some of them did get out, but none of them made it. None from this camp. We were too deep into Germany, and it was almost impossible to get out.
What did you do in the holidays and on your birthday?
Well, when you're interned like that, every day is like the day before. There's no such thing as holidays or birthdays. You just hope and pray that one day it's going to be over and you're going to get out. But it's not something you say, well, tomorrow's my birthday, I'm going to go out and celebrate. There's no such thing.
Did your family have any idea where you were?
We did occasionally get a letter from home. Of course, everything was censored. We were allowed to send one postcard, I think, every month. But this was long after we were established in this camp, and it took quite a while. But the Red Cross did notify our parents that we were alive in this prison camp.
How did you end up being released?
Pardon?
How did you end up being released?
Well, that's a long story, because what happened was that the Russians had started their advance, and they were coming west, and the Germans did not want the Russians to get us, so they marched us out of the prison camp. I remember the date because it was January 31st. And it was 40 below zero, and we gathered all our belongings and we started to walk. And we walked. We covered about, I'd say about 50 miles a day, 50, 60 miles a day. And the only thing we knew is that we were traveling west, and we could only determine that by the looking up at the sun, because we knew we were heading straight west. And we walked from January 31st until the middle of April. We started at the Oder River, where our camp was located, and we walked straight through Germany to the Elbe River, and it took us, it was over 3 months. And that, we left the camp with 3,000 prisoners, and we arrived at the Elbe River with 300. So there was a lot of loss of life. There was a lot of, I don't say they all died or didn't make it. Some of them took off on their own, because at that time, when the war was getting towards the close, the Germans laxed. They were a lot lax. They didn't guard us too good. A lot of them took off on their own. A lot of them got back on their own. But I stood with my friends. We stood together, and we made it. When we got to the Elbe River, we were parked alongside. We lined up alongside the river, and we could see the Americans standing guard on the other side, and the Germans told us that those were the Americans over there, because by this time the war was just about over. And they come over in boats and got us, and they brought the 300 of us across, and from then on we were in American hands. And this was, I'd say, towards the end of April.
How long in total were you kept a prisoner?
I was a prisoner for 26 months.
How did you feel when you were released?
Well, it's just like, it's hard to explain. It's just, I don't know, it's just, you feel that your dreams finally, or your prayers were finally answered, and here you were in American hands, and you were on your way back home. Eventually you were going to get back home because that was the next step from where we were.
How did being a prisoner of war affect your life once you were home?
Well, I don't know. You do a lot of growing up from being a young boy going into the service, and then going through the experience and everything else that you went through. It affects your life. It gives you a lot to think about. Makes you realize how lucky you are that you're still in one piece. And it's just, you just take life, you think a lot different about life at that point.
Did you have any nightmares?
Yeah, you do get nightmares now and then, and they lasted for a long time after the ordeal. But at this point now, it was over 52 years ago, and when you think back at it, it seems like yesterday that you wonder where all the years went. But it does have an effect on you, yes, it does.
Do you still have nightmares today?
But,
Do you still have nightmares today?
well, not too much anymore. It's as I said, it's over 52 years ago, and at this point, at this stage of the game, no, I don't feel that I do get any nightmares anymore.
Did your experience make you regret being in the war? Did it make you regret being in the war?
The only regret that I had was that I wasn't able to do more. I feel that I know some of my buddies that were not captured that day. They went on and fought the war, and it makes you feel that you were cheated, that you weren't able to fulfill the job you were sent there to do. And that's the only regret I have, is that I just didn't go on with my company and continue through.
Did you receive any medals?
Yes, I did receive a couple of medals, and I received a lot of ribbons, but as I say, I still have them.
Why do you think you were able to survive when others couldn't?
I don't know, maybe I was a little stronger than the others, I don't know. It's hard to say. I know a lot of them that didn't make it. I know a lot of them that, I know there was a couple of very good friends of ours that during that 3-month hike through Germany, we helped them, we carried them, and some just couldn't do it.
How would you consider yourself a survivor?
Well, I feel myself very fortunate to have gone through this ordeal, and I feel that I did contribute something to the cause. And I consider myself very lucky that I was able to get out and survive. I have lived a fairly good life after I was discharged.
Well, I really appreciate you taking out your time to do this interview with me. I know this must have been a hard topic for you to talk about, but I know I learned a lot about the prisoner of war camps from you as a primary source. Thank you.